Have you ever followed a leader, not because of their title, but because of how they showed up for you? I'm talking about not with grand speeches, not with flashy strategy, but with small, consistent acts of service that made you feel supported and seen. Well, in today's episode of Transformation Station, we're unpacking one of the most underestimated leadership superpowers. That's right, acts of service. And we're going to talk about why it matters. All right, let's dig in. All right. Well, welcome back to Best in Class series here on the Transformation Station Leadership Podcast. On Monday and Wednesdays, this is where we explore the habits, mindsets, and values that leaders are not just effective, but it helps to make us, that's right, I said us, exceptional. I'm your host, Adrienne Benton, and in today's episode, we're striking at the heart of real influence. We're talking about the power of service. Now, listen, today I am truly thrilled because of our guest. Let me tell you a little bit about him before he comes onto the platform. We're talking about Ray Martin, aka the Daily Explorer. He's an entrepreneur, an award-winning business leader, and as a coach, mentor, facilitator, speaker, writer, and mindfulness teacher, he is a torchbearer for greater human consciousness. Ray is also a marathon runner. I love that. And a fundraiser. He's on a mission to empower people like you and me to live authentically and to bring more joy and happiness into the world. Transformation Station community, help me right now to welcome Ray. Ray, welcome to our Best in Class series today.
Wow, I've got to say, that's probably the best welcome I've ever had on a podcast. That's beautiful. Such lovely energy as well.
Oh man, we're super thrilled to have you here. But listen, I'm really excited about this conversation because I believe in
Yeah,
it. I truly
great.
believe that the power, acts of service, is a superpower that we have as leaders, but many times don't tap into. So,
Yeah,
if you don't mind, I want to dive right in.
of
Ray,
course.
I've been reading about you, looking at your websites, and I know that you are experienced. And so, I want to ask you this question as the first question: how do you define acts of service in the context of leadership, and why do they matter now more than ever?
Yeah, well, for me, I'll see if I can answer that easily. An act of service is something that you genuinely do for others. There's no
Mm,
measure of what's in it for you.
mhm,
But of course, if you're a leader in, say, a business setting,
mhm,
you might imagine that if you help other people grow and develop and reach the vision they have for themselves, that will foster a sense of loyalty and engagement and people being committed to what they're doing and wanting to do a really great job for the company. But that's a
mhm,
choice they make for themselves.
mhm,
So you're doing it because you're in service to them, not because you're manipulating people in order to get results that you want.
mhm,
Although you would imagine that if people are really genuinely loved, cared for, supported to grow and develop, they are going to make a really good effort to make their best contribution. So those
that's
things
it.
do happen as a result, but it comes from a different place. And
Mm,
why they're so important at the moment is because everywhere you look in the
mhm,
public domain, particularly, and I'm talking about, largely things like political events, you see that, that community of people, especially our political leaders, are largely people that are entirely self-interested and corrupt and will manipulate any personal situation in order to meet their own agendas, while they present it as something that's sort of for the good of the citizens, which we all know it isn't. And so I think people are just generally hacked off about that inauthentic, ungenuine approach that most of our public leaders seem to have embraced. I think everyone's just sort of had enough of that.
mm. I totally agree with you. The other thing that I've seen recently is, in this day and age, people are like, life is lifing for people. And sometimes we can lose our identity even as leaders to where
Yeah.
we no longer take the time to remember that acts of service and leadership is not just about doing something for someone else, right? It's about showing up in a way that puts people before ego and mission before personal gain. To
Mm.
our leaders who are listening and who are watching, Ray shared with us why it is important now more than ever. And here, Ray, in Best of Class series, we always take a moment in the midst of the conversation to allow our leaders to reflect. And so,
Mm.
leaders, I want you to just take a moment right here and reflect on what Ray just shared with us and ask yourself, for you as a leader, why does acts of service, right? Putting people before your ego, mission before your personal gain, why does that matter now in this day and age more than ever? As you were talking, Ray, I thought about this particular quote, and the quote says, at their core, acts of service says, I see you, I'm with you, I'm willing to invest in your success, not just mine. Oh, I love that.
Yes.
I see you, I'm with you, and I'm going to invest in your success, not just mine. And I'm going to put you on the spot for a moment, Ray. When you hear that quote, what comes to your mind? What instantly calls you when you hear that?
What comes to my mind instantly are something I call, in my own language, my 6 rules for happiness. Because I don't know if you know that in the book that I published,
Mhm.
I was a successful CEO, but I always felt I was slightly out of
Mm,
alignment with who I really was in that role, even though I was extremely good at it. And
mm,
so good, I actually won the Business Leader of the Year award from the Daily Telegraph in England. So I was actually very competent, but I
mhm,
never truly felt that that was my life. I felt there's a lady called Bronnie Ware who works in a hospice. And
mhm,
so she only talks to people in the last days of their lives. And she wrote a really, really famous book that's millions
mhm,
of people read called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And in
mm,
that book, she said, I ask every person who's at the end of their life what they most regret. And
mm,
she said they all said the same 5 regrets, no matter who they were, how rich or poor they were, what they did, always the same 5. And the number one regret was, I wished I'd lived my life true to myself and not the life that other people expected of me. And one day I sort of had to face this realization that I was living a life that others expected of me and sort of doing it, but it wasn't really my own life. And so I took a courageous decision to take a 6 month sabbatical to find out more about what would be the true life that I would lead. And that didn't go according to plan. And I ended up living out of a backpack while I was traveling for 14 years instead of 6 months. And so I had a lot of time to get to the answer to that question. So I feel like I've learned a lot about this. And
mhm,
as a result of spending 14 years in the quest of trying to determine what living life true for myself was, I had the good fortune to meet a lot of spiritual teachers like Thich Nhat Hanh, the Dalai Lama, and other people who showed me how to look into that question deeply.
mm,
And I came to the conclusion that one of the 6 rules for happiness, for deep contentment and fulfillment, it's not
mm,
enough to just do things that help you improve yourself. The
mhm,
way to deep contentment is to, whatever you learn about how to improve your own life, is then to show others how to do the same, how to
mm,
replicate that. Because in order to teach that to others, you have to integrate it fully into yourself. And you can't fully integrate it unless you're having to teach someone else.
mhm,
It's simply not enough to do it just for yourself. And
mhm,
so my number 6 rule of my 6 rules is find and empower other people to live in the way that you're living. But you've got to be living it yourself first, because what we teach is, as Gandhi said, Gandhi famously said, your life is your message, because he was asked by reporters, what's your message, Mr. Gandhi, that they could write it in the newspaper. And he said, your life is your message. The way you live is your message.
mm,
And I'm a big believer in that. I've always lived a life by example rather than by words.
mhm.
And so I think this is a crucial point.
Wow. Like everything you said was amazing. You caught me there when you said your life is your message.
Yeah, I didn't say that. Gandhi said that, but I
Yes,
do
I'm sorry.
100% believe that.
But I mean, it really made me pause because I don't know how many of us really stop to think about. our life as a message. I mean, many
Yeah,
times we're thinking about it in terms of the execution, right? The
yeah,
responsibilities of life and all of those type of things. But my life is my message, your life
yeah,
as your message. So then that causes us to really ask ourselves, what message are we delivering to the world about who we are every single day? And for
yeah,
me, I'm thinking like, what message are we delivering to ourselves?
yeah. Yeah, well, I'm sure, I don't know, we didn't speak much before this interview, but I'm sure in the military you talk about this, because people have to lead and need the loyalty and obedience of the people in their troops, and they can't just demand that through their words. They've got to create and engender that kind of
Mhm.
loyalty through the true soul and heart spirit of the people they're leading, because you have to
Mhm.
lay down your lives for each other. It's completely different than being in the business world that I know, but the
Mhm.
stakes are so high in your world. I can imagine you must talk about this a lot.
Yes, from time to time we do, and the stakes are really high, and there's always that temptation to remove empathy because the
Yeah,
stakes are high, right? You're in these
yeah, yeah,
critical, right now, get it done, it matters moments. Yet, I have seen that when we remove empathy, when we move service orientation in our
yeah,
leadership, it it has an impact because
yes,
you do not truly get authenticity through your team, nor do you
mm,
really get the buy-in that is needed for the team to actually be a team and
mm,
to operate in an efficient manner, which leads me to this principle with what you're sharing today. The best leaders don't ask, how can I stand out? When we talk
yes.
about the power of service, acts of service, they ask, how can I serve in a way that lifts others up? Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're the measure of your success as a CEO is how many great leaders emerge from the organization you run. I mean,
Yes.
this would be a fantastic measure. If someone could say, well, we've we've sort of exported 500 new CEOs into the world from this. I would call it an academy. It's a business. It's not an academy, but you could think of it like that, as a graduating academy.
Hmm.
And I think some companies, when I grew up in the 60s and 70s, some
Hmm.
companies had that reputation. So this is going a long way back. I'm not
Hmm.
sure how old your listeners are, but if you work in those days, if you worked for a company like IBM or Hewlett Packard, and you came out of that organization as a senior leader, you were regarded very highly because they knew the amount of training and development you'd had, and the
Hmm.
kind of integrity in ethics in those environments meant you'd be really a very sharp and very well-rounded human being.
Yes.
And so they
Yes.
had that reputation, but very
Yes.
few companies have that reputation now.
Hmm. Another point of reflection, right?
Yeah,
So, to those
yeah,
of you who are listening, you want to just stop here and kind of assess the reputation of your company. You want to be able to assess and really. So, this next question, Ray, says, what is it like to live in the present moment and what impact does it have? Please speak to that leader right now that is go, 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 do. What would you say to
yeah.
that on what does it
Well,
mean to live in the present and what impact does it have?
it means a lot of things, but the thing that I would highlight the most, because it's what I've experienced, is that when you're not living in the present moment, half of your energy is tied up in your thoughts about the past or your thoughts about what's going to happen in the future. So you're physically in a room, you're say in a meeting with some colleagues, but in between every sentence that's spoken by somebody, half of your thinking is wandering off to somewhere else, and then you're coming back in and out all of the time. So essentially, when you're not present, you're missing your life. You're missing what's actually going on. Your attention and awareness is not picking up all of the information that's available to you in the room. You're not noticing the facial expressions on people. You're not seeing that some people are uncomfortable, or some people are silent, or some people are expressing some kind of resentment or dissent, and you're not picking it up. You just miss your life. You don't see it. It's not, your awareness and attention is not gathering that level of information because you're not present. But so the impact it has when you're fully present, you are noticing so much in the minutiae of detail that's informing your natural intelligence. Because if you and me are having a conversation and I'm just really observing you, I'm giving you my 100% undivided attention, I can look at you and say, look, I notice as I'm talking to you, I notice that your skin colour's gone a bit red, and I'm noticing that your voice is slightly shakier in this point in the conversation. And it's making me curious. What are you feeling as I'm talking? And what's happening for you as we're having this conversation? And I can actually really connect with you and see what's going on. But if you're not present and you're just thinking this is just something I've got to get done because I'm thinking about this board meeting I've got next, and you're just saying words to get the thing done, and the other person might as well not be there. You might as well talk to a cardboard cutout of them. So this is being present is, and I learned this massively from my best teacher was Thich Nhat Hanh, a Zen Buddhist monk who I had the good fortune to actually physically be around for quite a few months. And he died sadly 2 years ago. He's 95 he was, but most present, mindful, loving, peaceful man I've ever encountered. And he really taught me this. The greatest gift you can give another human being is your complete, undivided attention. There's nothing more precious than that.
Yes.
And people know that, and people really respond to that. When I get that from a person, God, I'd do anything for them.
Absolutely. I was thinking that as you were talking, as I've noticed in my own leadership, when I come to work and I'm present and I'm attentive, even in the midst of the busy, my team responds, right? Which reminds me of this quote that I saw, which says, healthier culture teams mirror the pace and the presence of their leaders. When you lead with awareness, which is exactly what Ray is talking about right now, you invite the same from others.
Yeah, and it's the Gandhi thing. Your life is your message. You're present, so other people, you give them permission to be present.
Yes. Oh, leaders who are listening and watching, what would your work culture be like today, tomorrow, next month, if you intentionally gave your team permission to be aware, permission to be present, to permission, right, to have a voice, to be able to speak with clarity? What would it be like?
And that could be as simple as, when you've got a meeting with colleagues at work, rather than start the meeting getting straight into the contents of what it is, like to agree the sales targets for the month, might be just spending 5 minutes going around saying, let's have a personal check-in. How are you showing up here? How are you feeling? What's going on for you? Do you want to just share what's you're really excited about, and maybe a challenge you have, so we can all connect with each other and get fully present?
Yeah. And I think in this day and age, Ray, this is really important, right? Because I think I was sharing with you before we started today, like life is lifing for many people. People are going through hard situations.
Oh, it's worse than ever, I think. There's so many people facing hard challenges.
It is. And when we come to work, it's not like your challenges stay outside the door.
I think for a lot of people these days, work is a place they can get a break.
Yes.
Their lives are challenging outside,
Lives are challenging outside, and yet we know that the weight of what you're dealing with still weighs on you. You try to compartmentalize and put it to the side so that you can focus on whatever the task is or the mission that you need to be focused on for those 8 hours. But man, when your team gives you an opportunity to be present and to be human in those 8 hours, that can be therapeutic, that can be healing. You know what I'm saying? And not only is the mission accomplished successfully, but that person's walking out like, woo, okay, I can continue to deal with the world, I can deal with life.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
we have a quote here that says, the present moment is where leadership becomes human.
Oh, that's lovely.
Again. So to our leaders, another place for a moment of reflection.
Yeah.
How in your leadership can you allow humanity to be present? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, if you talk to some of the super teachers around mindfulness, there's loads of them, like John Kabat-Zinn is often talked about. No, he would say that, being present means being aware and noticing without judgment. It's the abilities without the judgment. So my rule number 3 of my 6 rules for happiness is become your own observer. Can you imagine what life is like if you are simply observing what is taking place in your environment, and you have no opinion or judgment about what you're observing? You're just observing and saying, I see, what I observe is this. Because, often you can say, I'm observing a conversation taking place between two people. That's what you're seeing. But someone who's not really doing that without judgment might say, that person seems to be really manipulating the other person or something. They've got a story and a judgment that's weaved into the observation that distorts it. The Buddhists call that delusional thinking. So it's a distortion, and most of us think that our distorted view, our perception, is actually reality. But it's not, because reality has no judgment. It just is what it is. It's what's actually what. If you can observe it, see it. And observing it means, what is a person doing or saying? And literally that. What do I heard you say this, or I saw you do this. You don't have to judge it.
Yeah, please tell us a little bit more about this right here. I feel like this is important. So talk to us a little bit more.
So say a person comes to work late two or three times. If I'm not mindful, I would say, you don't seem to care about your work. That's a judgment, because it's my story. I've looked at that. But a mindful person might say, can I talk to you about a couple of observations I've made? And the person would say, well, I noticed on Monday and Wednesday you arrived at 9:10 on both days. And I noticed, this week you came 5 minutes after 9 on one day. And it just made me curious, because I wonder if there's something going on for you, or there's something that's preventing you from, working to the agreement of the times we start. And I'd really like to explore what's happening for you, because I don't want to judge you. I want to understand what's behind this.
This is powerful vocabulary.
Yeah, so you're actually noticing that you want to make a judgment in your own head, because that's much more convenient, and you don't have to have a conversation with the other person, so it's much quicker. But if that person says, well, that's really kind of you to ask. Actually, my son's been really sick, and I have had real problems getting medical cover and blah, blah, blah. And this has really been terribly difficult for me. And then you can say, okay, so what do you need? What kind of support would be helpful here?
Wow. And what a difference it makes, again, when those you are leading believe that they are seen and believe that they are, as opposed to judged.
Yeah, I mean, that to me, if someone's going to choose one or the other, and a lot of people, I do think they're on autopilot, because we all have an autopilot. And so they notice, when someone does that consistently, it means they don't care, because they knew someone once, like 10 years ago, who didn't care. But that's not for everyone. It's not applicable to everybody.
Correct.
And so it's easy to judge.
Yeah, you're right, and it takes intentional work not to judge.
It's the laziest way of navigating is through judgment.
Mercy. You're hitting us some serious gems today, Ray. I appreciate this. So let me ask you this: in the fast, because we talked about the world that we live in now, right? So in the fast-paced environments that we are operating in, sometimes when we talk about service, right, it can feel like a luxury. I don't have time to be service orientated. What would you say to leaders today in terms of how can leaders integrate service without sacrificing the productivity that they have for mission completeness?
Yeah, I like what you're saying. To me, that's a myth it's got no truth in it at all. It's like an urban legend. But when you actually get down to it, the fact is, if you don't take the time to set up the conditions in which people can really thrive, you're actually undoing problems that get caused for much more of the time than you would be otherwise. So if you have a conversation for an hour with a person, which you normally might take 10 minutes over, but you spend an hour really getting to know them, really understanding them, and then reaching clear agreements which that person consciously agrees to, and they know why they're doing it, then the chances of it being successful are like 5 or 10 times higher. And if you don't do any of that, you've got problems of work having to be redone, things not getting done at all that were expected or imagined would happen, but they don't. work not being done to the standard of detail or correctness that's required in certain contexts. That costs the company money through refunds and reworks, etc., etc. So I've done a lot of work on this when I was a CEO of my own company, because the rework cost of some jobs is very, very high. If you have to rewrite a document or reschedule something that was done already, but it has to be redone. You're talking about thousands of pounds in some instances. So it has a massive financial impact, but it's hard to measure because those details don't get pulled out from the big financial picture. But Correct. You can measure it. But mostly it impacts the morale of your staff and the people that work for you. So I think it's got a cost on both levels.
So it's really important for, if I hear you correctly, it's important for leaders to understand that service and productivity really need to work hand in hand.
Yeah.
Right? Not be enemies. Right? Yeah, it's not one or the other, it's both.
Yeah, the main shift I've seen I've been in business now for 40 plus years, but the main shift I've seen in the last 10 years is that the leaders that I see are really great at what they do. They're much more coaches than they are managers of tasks. That they set the person up really well. They say, look, I'm here if you need anything at all, just come and ask me. I'll give you any support I can. And you can just get on with that and do that however you think works best. But they're not managing them and sort of micromanaging, checking up on everything they're doing, or picking holes in the way it's been done because they did it differently, or things like this. These are some common mistakes that happen.
I like that. And you're right. They do happen. Sometimes we feel like, I don't know, maybe sometimes we're steered to believe that if you call out what the infraction, violation, missing link is, just call it out directly, then that's the best way. But if I hear you correctly, we need to step back. And I love what you said earlier in terms of talking to the individual and saying, here's what I noticed.
Yeah. But also, I don't want to
going on here.
I don't want to appear like, being in service to some people sounds like you're so soft and let the other person do whatever they want that you can't. No. I want to say something to counterbalance that, because it's an act of service to hold someone to account to something they've agreed to do. To bring the heat of that accountability to them. That's an act of service. So you can say, we had an agreement in which you agreed you would do this by this time. You haven't done it. The impact that has on me is it's created some frustration for me. That's caused me some difficulties in getting something done that was depending on that. And so I'm really needing to understand what's prevented you from meeting your side of that agreement. And I don't want that to happen again. So can we look at what's happened? So this is still love, but it's a kind of supportive, radical challenge love. But it's not soft. It's not wishy-washy. It's concrete.
Absolutely. And here we have a leadership quote that says, "Service isn't a pause from productivity. It's the pulse of sustainable leadership."
Yeah.
Pulse means it's breathing, it's still active, it's still moving forward. So to take those moments, like what Ray was saying, this is what I see, this is what I notice, is this what's really going on, right? Taking that pause, you're not pulling away from the productivity. No, you're still allowing life to be in the moment, in the mission, right? So that you can continue to move forward. And then another leadership principle: when leaders integrate service into how they lead, not just what they do, they create cultures that are fast, focused, and human. And I feel like, Ray, this is important to say, because we're talking to a community of high driven, powerful leaders, right? They go, they produce. And so somebody may be listening to us right now and saying, hey, you know what, this really sounds good, but they're still thinking at the end of the day about numbers, the metrics, right?
Yeah.
And so it's important to say, hey, when you take the time to be service oriented as a leader, guess what? You're going to open up, as you said earlier, empower the culture in which you're leading to be fast, focused, and human. So your productivity will actually increase.
Yeah, at least that's the way I see it. And I've got lots of lived experience where that's happened.
Absolutely,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. So then to the leader right now that's listening, Ray, can you please share with us from your CEO experience, how can leaders find their own path amidst the noise, the chaos, and the pressures to conform?
Yeah, everyone's going to do that slightly differently, but the two things that I think that really underpin it are the vision you have for yourself and what your values are. And so those are the two things to start with as your own foundation. Everyone's got a vision of what they consider would be their best life, and that can apply as a leader, as a parent, as a sibling, as a community member. You know, you can put it in any context, but there's always a picture that you're headed, whether you're fully conscious of it or just semi-conscious of it. There's always a picture that you're heading towards that you believe is what your best life will look like, feel like, sound like, etc. So spending time articulating that in as much detail as you can, just for yourself. I mean, not for anyone else, but just for yourself. I did that in 2010. I spent 8 days in a program supported by great coaches to write down a vision of a life that I was trying to build. I was 50 when I did this. And I described my vision over 3 or 4 pages in 4 areas. I described my vision for me as a man in the world, for me as a partner in a relationship, for me in my professional work, and for me what my home would look like and feel like and sound like. And so I was encouraged and supported to actually articulate that in all of those areas. And I've followed that guiding light of my own vision ever since. And I'm sort of more or less manifested that life 15 years later we're in, but I'm now living in that life that I had as a picture back then. So that's vision. And then values, knowing what's important to you, because I know for me, my 4 core values are love, freedom, integrity, and exploration. So somehow, every day I'm alive, I've got to feel like I'm honoring those values, that I'm making choices which line up well with those. And so one choice I can't make is to do something I know is absolutely wrong. It just doesn't feel right. I'll be out of integrity with myself. I will feel like a person who has no integrity. I can't renege on any agreements I make. I have to keep the promises I make. Not because the other person's going to tell me I'm bad. It's because I feel crappy about myself if I don't honor that value I have of integrity. So I want to be a person whose word can be trusted. So I do it for myself. It's not a lot of people do this to just avoid conflict with the other person, but I couldn't care less about that. I do it for me. I honor my value of love. So I try and be in as many conversations that are difficult and challenging, particularly where I'm being attacked or criticized for something I haven't done. I try to respond with kindness, compassion, with some empathy and understanding that person's in pain. And although they might not be talking what I would consider to be in a skillful way to me, they're in pain and they're trying to get a need met, and I can be compassionate about that. And I don't need to react and I don't need to try and kind of stop them with force in my voice, or any kind of violent in energy,
Yes. Yes.
And so these are things that I'm talking about. So vision and values, once you've got those really nailed and you really have them firmly planted in your psyche, then that's going to determine a lot of your behavior.
Yes. Yeah. So listen, I'm excited to hear more, and I'm going to ask you if you can just tell us a little bit more, right? So we talked about value, and you started off by talking to us about love. Talk to us about freedom, integrity, and exploration.
Yeah, these are just my personal values. These are not values everyone should have.
Yes.
For me, I've always, ever since I was a kid, I've always wanted to be free to think and speak in a way that I feel is my truth. And that's why the issue of censorship is so big, because we're living in a world these days where there's more and more overt censorship, what you're allowed to say, what you can say, what you're punished for saying, beliefs and thoughts that you hold. There's much less permission for that, I think, in the tiers of power that govern our society. And so that's always been a big issue for me. Like, I am a very big advocate for freedom of speech and freedom of expression, And I genuinely believe that everyone's God-given right is to live their life true to who they are and be and say and do anything they wish to, as long as it's not harmful in a very concrete way to others. So that's number one, around freedom. Exploration, I'm only feeling really content in life if I'm always on the frontier of something new for myself. So I'm a person who rocks his own boat quite frequently if I feel I'm not really growing or I'm stuck or I'm a bit stagnant. I very consciously, purposely choose new things to explore and understand that are beyond my knowledge. And even if they're challenging, I kind of quite like it, because I like exploring the unknown, what I'd call the unknown. So I find something I know nothing about, a country, a place, a topic, some part of history, a language, playing the guitar, it doesn't matter. But and that's one of the reasons why when I had my 6-month sabbatical that accidentally and quite unexpectedly turned into a 14-year journey, I was constantly on the frontier of exploration through those 14 years, and I grew enormously, and I feel so happy that I had that experience. I feel alive. It keeps me alive.
So please tell us a little bit more just about the sabbatical experience. Why, from your perspective, why do you believe it's important that, not everybody is in a position that they can take a 6-month or 14-year, right? But why do you think the concept, the idea, the principle, the value of a sabbatical is important for leaders? Talk to us a little bit about that.
However long it is, whether it's a week, a day, it doesn't matter. The principle is that, and Stephen Covey summed this up beautifully in his book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which was published at least 50 years ago. And it's probably one of the most widely read self-help books in the world. I don't know if you've come across it. But one of the habits in his book, The 7 Habits, was sharpen the saw, he called it. He said, so he used the metaphor of being a lumberjacks. In the old days, 2 lumberjacks, they held this long saw, one handle each, and they moved it backwards and forwards between each other as they sawed the tree. And of course, they can do their best work when the saw is really sharp. So they have to spend 80% of their life sawing and 20% of their life sharpening, because you can't spend 100% sawing. The blade gets blunt, so it doesn't work anymore. So if you apply that to yourself, it means that if you're a leader, 20% of your time will be spent alone, reflecting on what you're doing, asking for feedback from people, looking at how you can improve the way you're being and doing things as a leader. You can't just be in the leading, doing stuff 100% of the time without any conscious effort to reflect and review and improve, wisely reflect and improve what you're doing. That's the sharpen the saw principle that Covey wrote about so clearly.
I love that. Sharpen the saw. This has been so rich. We literally could talk for like 5 more hours, because I think
great.
it's time to unpeel the onion. But I as we turn the corner, I want to end on this question, because we have leaders who have been listening and they're saying, okay, got it, I'm for it, but how do I start? So Ray, what's one intentional act of service that leaders can do this week to strengthen trust and connection with their team?
An obvious one to me is to just have conversations with each of the people in your team and just make sure you know what their dreams are. What is their dream for themselves, their vision of them being their highest possibility. And just really understanding that alone means you can look towards that person with a clear understanding and hopefully an intention to give them the support they need to reach that vision for themselves. And if you don't know that about all the people that work directly for you, I think that's a blind spot, definitely.
Mercy. Okay, I feel impressed to ask you. All right, we're really going to end here, right? What's one final word, advice, admonition? What's one final word that you would want to share with the leaders who are in the Transformation Station community that's listening or watching you right now as it pertains to the power of service?
One word. Gosh, I've got to pick one word. I'm not sure that I can do that one word, but I would just say, just trust that is going to take you to the right place. Just trust.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. Well, listen, this has been phenomenal. I mean, really, for me personally, I want to go back and watch this again because
Okay.
there were so many rich gems that I think are practical and executable, like right now, to improve leadership, enhance, life and the cultures within our teams.
Mm.
I know that there are leaders that will want to engage with you, find out more about your book,
Sure.
the resources, what you offer. So please, can you share with us if somebody wants to engage with you, to use your resources, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, there's two ways. One is to go to a website, lifewithoutatie.com, because that's the name of the book, Life Without a Tie. That has a lot of information and some background about myself. And I'm also a big participant on LinkedIn. And that's where I conduct most of my conversations in the social media world. So LinkedIn, Coach Ray Martin on LinkedIn. Be happy to talk to anyone out there who wants to have a conversation about how their leadership life is unfolding.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Transformation Station community, we want to support Ray. You heard he's on LinkedIn, right? Look for him, Ray Martin, LinkedIn. He's there as a coach. Engage with him, talk with him. Matter of fact, let him know that you watched or you heard this episode and ask him any question, right? And also, you see his website, Life Without a Tie. It's also in the description for this particular episode. Ray, thank you so much.
No, my pleasure.
If you would have us, we definitely will be asking you to come back again so we
Oh,
can
wow. Yeah, no, I'd
for
love to.
next time. But thank you again. It's been
Okay.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, there you have it. Another amazing episode. Let's be clear. Service doesn't mean being small. It means choosing significance over spotlight. Service doesn't always mean doing more, sometimes it means noticing more. And this week, you heard Ray talk to us about the one act of service that you can offer. I want to invite you to go ahead and identify one act of service that you can offer. No fanfare, no applause, no thank you, just quiet leadership that makes someone else's day lighter and brighter. Then go ahead and share your reflections with Ray and I. Tag us at Transformation Station Leadership on LinkedIn. Tag Ray, he's a coach there on LinkedIn, or drop a comment on today's post, whether you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, or you're listening on Apple, Spotify, Buzzsprout. We want to hear from you. I want to know how you're leading through service. And finally, as always, don't forget to subscribe, share, and invite another colleague to listen. Why? Because we want to normalize service as a strategy, not just a sacrifice. Thanks for being here. And until our next episode, stay grounded, stay generous, and stay transformational.